The small town of Willow Creek was quiet that early morning. The sun was just starting to rise, casting soft orange light over the dusty streets and wooden houses. Birds were singing softly, and the wind gently moved the dry leaves along the ground. But inside a little, old house at the edge of town, something was very different. Inside, a woman was in pain. She was about to give birth. Mara was young and tired. She lived alone in that small house. Her life had not been easy. She did not have much, just a few old clothes, some blankets, and a broken rocking chair. Her belly was heavy, and her heart was heavy too. She was scared because she knew the baby she was about to have might not have a happy future. Mara's family had left long ago. No one came to help her now. The neighbors only whispered about her, saying she made bad choices, or that she brought trouble. No one knocked on her door. No one asked if she needed help. The pain grew stronger, but Mara held her breath and tried to stay calm. She had no doctor. No nurse. Just the quiet room around her and the little light coming from a candle. After many long hours, the baby finally came. A tiny girl with soft, dark hair and eyes that blinked slowly. But Mara was weak. She was bleeding and could hardly move. The baby cried faintly, her small body shaking with each breath. Mara held her daughter close, feeling a strange mix of love and fear. She knew she could not take care of this child. She was alone, with no money, no family, and no hope for the future. The baby was still very fragile. Her skin was soft like flower petals, and her hands were no bigger than a small bird's wings. Mara whispered a name for her, Lily, because she wanted her to be strong, like a flower that grows even in hard places. But Mara's fear grew faster than her hope. She knew she had to make a hard choice. That afternoon, the baby was taken to the town's small auction house. It was a plain building with faded paint and dusty windows. Inside, people came for many reasons. Sometimes they bought animals, sometimes tools, sometimes old furniture. Today, the baby was being sold. No one knew the story behind the tiny girl. They only saw a small, quiet child wrapped in thin blankets. Some people felt sorry for her. Others thought she was just another thing to buy and sell. Mara's heart ached as she watched the baby being carried away. She had no money, no friends, no way to keep her safe. She could only hope someone kind would give her daughter a better life. The auction room was full of people. Some whispered about the baby's fate. Others looked bored or uninterested. A few glanced at the baby and turned away quickly. The air was heavy and cold. A man named Tom stood in the back. He was a rancher who lived outside the town, on a big piece of land where wild horses ran free and the wind sang through the tall grass. Tom was strong and quiet. He did not talk much, but his eyes were kind and full of warmth. Tom did not need a child. He had lived alone for many years, caring for his land and animals. But something about the baby made him feel different. Maybe it was the way she looked, so small and delicate, yet alive. Maybe it was the sadness he saw in her eyes. When the auctioneer began to speak, the room grew quiet. "This little girl was born just this morning," the auctioneer said. "She needs a home and someone to care for her. Who will take her?" People murmured softly. Some made small bids, but no one seemed truly interested. It was as if the baby was just a thing to be sold, not a living, breathing person. Then Tom stepped forward. He raised his hand and said clearly, "I will buy her." The room was silent for a moment. Then whispers spread quickly. "Why would he do that? Does he even want a baby? Is he crazy?" But Tom did not answer. He smiled gently and took the baby in his arms. She was warm, and her soft skin felt like silk against his rough hands. He looked down at her and whispered, "Don't worry, little one. I'll take care of you." Tom left the auction house with the baby wrapped safely in a blanket. The sun was setting, painting the sky with pink and purple colors. The town looked different now, quieter and smaller. But in Tom's heart, something was growing, a promise to protect this fragile life. The ride back to the ranch was slow. Tom talked softly to the baby, telling her about the wide open fields, the horses, and the stars that would shine brightly at night. He imagined her running through the grass, laughing and happy. That night, Tom made a small bed for Lily near the fireplace. The house was old, but clean and warm. He watched her sleep, feeling a strange but wonderful feeling, hope. Outside, the wind blew softly through the trees, and the stars twinkled high above. Somewhere in the dark, a flower was starting to bloom. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over Willow Creek, filling the town with soft golden light. The streets were quiet, except for the gentle sounds of chickens clucking and the distant barking of dogs. Inside the small auction house, the air was cool and still. The auction house was an old wooden building with paint peeling off the walls. The floor was made of rough wood, and the windows were dusty. People came here often to buy or sell animals, tools, and other things they needed. But today, the most unusual thing was on the table: a tiny baby girl wrapped in a thin blanket. The auctioneer, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, stood in front of the crowd. His voice was calm as he spoke. "This little girl was born just yesterday," he said, "and she needs a new home. She is very fragile and will need love and care." The people in the room looked at the baby in different ways. Some smiled softly, touched by her smallness. Others looked away quickly, not sure what to think. Some whispered among themselves, wondering if it was a good idea to buy a baby. A woman near the door shook her head quietly. "Why would anyone sell a baby?" she asked. The auctioneer did not answer. He only looked at the baby and then back at the crowd. The bidding began slowly. A man raised his hand and offered a small amount of money. A few others followed, but the bids were low. No one seemed very eager to take the baby home. To many, she was just a problem, a responsibility too big for most to handle. One man, tall and rough with dirt on his clothes, whispered, "She'll never survive without a mother." Another woman said quietly, "Poor child. No one wants her." The baby cried softly, her tiny voice breaking the silence. Her eyes looked around, confused and searching for someone to hold her. In the back of the room, a man named Tom watched quietly. He was a rancher who lived far outside the town, where the land was wide and open. Tom was a simple man who loved his animals and the quiet life on his ranch. He didn't speak much, but his eyes were kind and gentle. Tom had come to the auction that day to buy some tools and feed for his horses. He wasn't planning to buy the baby. He had no experience with children, and life on the ranch was already full of hard work. But something about the baby caught his attention. Maybe it was the way she looked, so small and weak, yet still alive and breathing. Maybe it was the sadness he saw in her eyes. As the bid stayed low, Tom felt a quiet voice inside him say, "You should help her." When the auctioneer asked for a final bid, Tom raised his hand. The room went silent. No one expected it. "I'll take her," Tom said quietly but firmly. People looked at him in surprise. A few whispered behind his back, wondering why he would do such a thing. "Is he serious?" one man asked. "Why would he want a baby?" a woman said. Tom didn't answer. He only looked at the baby, who was now sleeping softly in her thin blanket. The auctioneer smiled warmly. "The baby has found a new home," he said. "Thank you, sir." Tom walked slowly to the table and gently lifted the baby into his arms. Her small body was warm and fragile. He felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Outside, the sun was high in the sky, and the wind blew softly through the trees. Tom knew that life would change now. Taking care of a baby was a big responsibility. But he was ready. He carried the baby to his old pickup truck and wrapped her carefully in a thicker blanket. The ride to his ranch was quiet. Tom talked softly to her, telling her about the animals she would meet and the stars she would see at night. At the ranch, the house was old but strong. The walls smelled of wood and earth. Tom made a small bed by the fireplace, using soft blankets to keep the baby warm. He watched her sleep for a long time, feeling a new kind of love growing inside him. The days that followed were quiet but full of small moments. Tom learned how to feed the baby, change her blankets, and soothe her cries. It was not easy, but he did not give up. Sometimes, the baby would look at him with wide eyes, and Tom would smile back, feeling a special connection. In the town, the news spread quickly. People talked about the rancher who bought the baby from the auction. Some still whispered, "Why would he do that?" But others smiled and said, "Maybe he has a kind heart." Tom did not care what people said. He knew that the baby, whom he now called Lily, needed a home filled with love. And he would do everything he could to give her that. Every morning, Tom opened the windows wide to let the fresh air in. He told Lily stories about the animals, the horses, the cows, and the little birds that sang outside. He promised her a life where she would be safe and happy. Though the baby was still small and fragile, there was a new hope growing inside the old house. It was the hope of a fresh start and the promise of love. And on that quiet ranch, far from the busy town, a small life began to grow, ready to bloom like a flower in the warm sunlight. The day of the auction was unlike any other in Willow Creek. The small auction house was filled with people, all gathered around the worn wooden table where the tiny baby girl lay wrapped in a thin blanket. The sun shone through dusty windows, casting warm light on the crowd, but the mood inside was quiet and tense. Some people looked at the baby with pity, others with indifference. No one spoke loudly, but whispers floated through the room like soft wind. Most of the townspeople thought she would bring more trouble than joy, and no one was eager to take her home. Tom stood near the back of the room, his tall frame steady and calm. He wore a simple hat and rough clothes, but his eyes held kindness. He was used to hard work and quiet days on his ranch, far from the noise of the town. Today, he was only there to buy supplies, not a baby. But when the auctioneer lifted his hammer and called for bids, Tom felt something deep inside him change. He looked at the baby's small face, so peaceful now, and he remembered the promise he had made to himself the night before to protect her, no matter what. A man raised his hand and offered a small amount. Another whispered a number even lower. The bids were quiet, and the auctioneer waited patiently for more. Tom's heart beat faster. He had never cared much about money, and he wasn't rich. But this baby needed someone. She needed a home where she could be safe, where someone could teach her to smile and laugh again. Without thinking twice, Tom raised his hand. "I will buy her," he said simply. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him. A few people frowned, whispering to each other. "Why would a rancher want a baby?" they murmured. Tom ignored the questions. He stepped forward and gently took the baby in his arms. She stirred slightly, her small fingers curling around his rough shirt. The auctioneer smiled warmly. "Thank you, sir," he said. "You have given this little one a chance." Tom nodded and wrapped the baby in a thicker blanket he had brought from his truck. Then, without looking back, he walked out of the auction house, carrying the small life carefully. Outside, the sun was warm and bright. The breeze smelled of fresh grass and wildflowers. Tom climbed into his old pickup truck and began the drive back to his ranch, a place far from the busy town and its many worries. The baby, whom Tom had quietly decided to call Lily, looked up at him with curious eyes. Tom smiled softly. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I'll take care of you." The drive was long and quiet. The road twisted through fields and hills, where horses grazed peacefully and the sky stretched wide and blue. Tom thought about the life Lily would have here, away from the noise and fear. When they arrived at the ranch, Tom opened the door and carried Lily inside. The house was old but warm. The wooden floor creaked softly under his boots. He had already made a small bed near the fireplace, with soft blankets and pillows. Tom laid Lily down gently. She looked around, blinking her big dark eyes at the flickering firelight. For the first time, she seemed calm. Tom sat beside her, watching her sleep. His mind was full of hopes and worries. He did not know much about babies, but he knew one thing: he would do everything to give her a good life. Days passed slowly on the ranch. Tom learned how to feed Lily, how to soothe her when she cried, and how to keep her warm on cold nights. Sometimes, he would sing softly, his rough voice gentle and kind. Lily grew stronger each day. Her cheeks filled out, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity. She reached out to touch the horses outside the window and smiled when Tom tickled her tiny toes. Word spread in town about the rancher who had bought the baby from the auction. Some people were surprised. Others were doubtful. Why would he want a child, they asked. But Tom didn't mind. He knew that what mattered was not what others thought, but what he felt in his heart. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Tom sat outside with Lily in his lap. The sky was painted with pink and orange, and the air smelled of earth and grass. Lily looked up at the colors and giggled. Tom laughed too, a deep sound that echoed softly in the quiet evening. "You're going to be strong," he said softly. "Just like the flowers that grow after the rain." In that moment, Tom felt a peace he had never known before. He was not alone anymore. With Lily by his side, his life was full of new hope. The auction house was behind them now, a place of fear and loneliness. Ahead was a future filled with love and kindness, waiting to bloom. And on the quiet ranch, under the wide open sky, a small girl and a simple man began a new journey together, one filled with promise, care, and the power of a heart that chooses to give. The days at the ranch passed quietly, but they were full of small, precious moments. The old house stood strong among the wide fields, its wooden walls holding the gentle sounds of new life inside. Tom had never imagined that his quiet world could change so much in just a few weeks. Lily was growing. Her soft cries turned into gentle coos, and then into little giggles that filled the house with joy. Every morning, the sun poured through the windows, waking them both with warm light and hope. Tom learned new things every day. He had never cared for a baby before, but his strong hands were gentle when he held Lily. He made sure she was warm and fed, and he watched her carefully, learning to understand her little needs. The ranch was full of animals. Horses grazed in the fields, cows wandered slowly, and birds sang from the tall trees. Tom loved his animals, and he wanted Lily to love them too. One afternoon, he carried her outside to meet the horses. The horses were curious. They sniffed Lily gently with their soft noses, and Lily smiled, reaching out to touch their smooth coats. Tom laughed softly. "See? They like you," he said. Lily's favorite place became the porch. From there, she could see the wide fields, the tall grass moving with the wind, and the endless sky above. Tom sat with her there every evening, telling her stories about the stars and the moon. "Look up, Lily," he would say. "The stars are like tiny lights watching over us. They shine bright even in the darkest night." Lily listened with wide eyes, feeling safe and loved. Inside the house, Tom made a small corner just for Lily. He placed soft blankets and pillows on the floor, creating a cozy space where she could play and rest. He even found an old rocking chair and fixed it, so he could sit and hold her close. The neighbors began to notice the change too. Some stopped by to visit, bringing small gifts, fresh eggs, warm blankets, or little toys. They saw how Tom cared for Lily and started to believe in the hope he carried in his heart. One day, a woman named Mary came to the ranch. She was the town's nurse and had heard about Lily. She smiled kindly and said, "Tom, you're doing a good job. Lily is lucky to have you. Tom nodded, feeling proud but also a little unsure. I don't know much about babies, he said. But I want her to have a good life. Mary patted his shoulder gently. Love is the most important thing, she said. You have that, and that's enough. Lily grew stronger and more curious. She reached for the flowers in the garden and laughed when the wind tickled her cheeks. Tom watched her with a heart full of joy. Every smile, every new sound, was a treasure. But sometimes, at night, when the house was quiet and the stars shone outside, Tom thought about the auction house. He remembered how lonely and scared Lily must have felt there. He made a silent promise to protect her from that fear forever. One evening, as the sun was setting, Tom sat with Lily on the porch. The sky was painted in colors of pink and purple, and the air was soft and warm. Lily looked up at him and smiled. Tom smiled back, feeling a deep happiness. You're home now, Lily, he said softly. This is your place. You're safe here. Lily reached up and touched his cheek, her tiny fingers gentle and trusting. Tom felt a tear in his eye. He was not just a rancher anymore, he was family. The old house on the ranch was no longer just a building. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the song of hope and the quiet strength of a little girl who was learning to bloom. The days grew longer and warmer at the ranch, and with each sunrise, Lily and Tom grew closer. The quiet ranch that had once been just a place to work and live had now become a home filled with soft laughter and new hope. Tom was patient and gentle with Lily. Though he was a man used to hard work and simple living, he learned to slow down and pay attention to the little things: her tiny hands reaching for his finger, her first smile, her soft coos that sounded like music. Lily, too, was learning to trust. At first, she had been shy and unsure, her eyes wide and searching. But slowly, as Tom held her close and spoke softly, she began to relax. She knew he was different from the others she had seen. He was kind, and his heart was open. Each morning, Tom carried Lily outside to the big porch where the fresh air was cool and the sky stretched wide. He pointed to the birds singing in the trees and told her their names. That one is a robin, he said, and that one is a blue jay. Lily listened carefully, her bright eyes following the bird's flight. Sometimes she laughed when a squirrel darted across the yard, and Tom laughed with her. One afternoon, Tom took Lily to meet the animals on the ranch. The horses nuzzled her gently, and she giggled with delight. The cows came slowly to see the new little visitor, and even the chickens stopped their pecking to watch. Tom held Lily in his arms and said softly, "You belong here, with all of us. We'll take care of you." At night, Tom would sit beside Lily's small bed and tell her stories. He spoke about the stars, the moon, and the quiet beauty of the ranch at night. His voice was low and steady, like a warm blanket. Lily would listen, her eyes heavy with sleep, and when the story ended, she would reach out and hold Tom's hand, trusting him completely. But trust did not come quickly or easily. Sometimes, when a loud wind blew through the trees or the dogs barked at night, Lily would wake suddenly, her face showing fear. Tom would lift her gently, whispering calm words and holding her close until she felt safe again. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with soft oranges and purples, Tom sat on the porch with Lily in his lap. She was learning to say simple words now, and her voice was soft and sweet. "Tom," she said, reaching for his face. Tom smiled and brushed her hair back gently. "Yes, Lily." She laughed and said again, "Tom." It was a small thing, but for Tom, it was the greatest gift. It meant Lily was beginning to feel at home, beginning to call him family. The neighbors often stopped by to visit. Some brought fresh vegetables from their gardens, others brought blankets or toys. They all wanted to help, and slowly the ranch became a place of kindness and friendship. Tom was grateful for the help but knew that the real gift was the love he saw growing between him and Lily. It was a quiet, simple love, like the soft light of dawn or the gentle wind through the grass. One day, a letter came from a woman in town. She was a teacher who wanted to visit the ranch and meet Lily. Tom was nervous but agreed. When the teacher arrived, she smiled kindly and knelt beside Lily. "Hello, little one," she said softly. "I'm here to help you learn and grow." Lily looked up at her with curiosity but did not shy away. Tom felt proud and hopeful. The teacher spoke with Tom about school and books, and about how Lily could learn about the world. Tom listened carefully. He wanted Lily to have every chance, every opportunity. That night, as Tom sat beside Lily's bed, he thought about all the things she would learn and all the places she might go one day. His heart was full of hope and dreams. He whispered softly, "You are not alone anymore, Lily. You have a family now. And together, we will face whatever comes." Outside, the stars shone bright, watching over the ranch and the little girl who was learning to trust, to love, and to grow. The seasons began to change slowly at the ranch. The air grew warmer, and the fields were alive with green grass and wildflowers. Birds sang joyfully, and the sun seemed to shine brighter every day. For Lily, it was a time of discovery and growth. Tom watched her carefully. Each small movement and sound was a new adventure. The tiny baby who once cried quietly in his arms was now growing stronger. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her hands reached out to touch the world around her. One bright morning, Tom sat on the porch holding Lily close. The warm sun kissed their faces, and the soft breeze played with her fine hair. Today was special. Tom had promised himself he would help Lily take her first steps. Lily's little legs were still weak, but she was eager. She looked up at Tom with bright eyes and a small smile, ready to try. "Come on, Lily," Tom said gently. "You can do it." Tom held her hands carefully and helped her stand. For a moment, Lily's feet touched the wooden porch floor. She wobbled but didn't fall. Step by step, with Tom's steady hands guiding her, Lily took her first small steps. Her face lit up with surprise and joy. Tom laughed softly, his eyes shining with pride. "Good job, Lily. You're doing great." Lily's laughter was like music. It filled the quiet ranch and warmed Tom's heart in ways he had never known. That day, Tom spent hours helping Lily practice walking. They went outside to the soft grass, where her feet sank gently. The horses watched quietly from a distance, their big eyes calm and kind. Lily reached out to touch the grass, then took a few more steps, growing more confident with each try. Tom stayed close, ready to catch her if she stumbled. But Lily was strong. She wanted to explore, to see everything. As the days went by, Lily's steps became stronger. She ran with laughter, chasing butterflies and picking wildflowers. Tom smiled every time he saw her moving freely. Life at the ranch was changing. The days were busy but happy. Tom still worked hard with the animals and the land, but now his heart was full of love and purpose. One afternoon, a visitor came to the ranch. It was Mary, the town nurse. She smiled warmly when she saw Lily walking outside. "You've come so far, little one," Mary said. "And you have a very proud father." Tom nodded, feeling grateful for Mary's kind words. "I'm here to help," she added. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Tom thanked her quietly. He knew that the road ahead might be difficult sometimes, but with help and love, they could face anything. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Tom sat on the porch with Lily in his lap. She was tired but happy, her small face glowing with the day's adventures. "Look at you," Tom whispered. "You're growing up so fast." Lily looked up at him and smiled, her eyes full of trust. Tom felt a deep peace. He thought about the day she was born, how fragile and small she had been, how uncertain the future seemed. But now, here she was, strong and full of life. He knew that the journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, but they would face them together. For Tom and Lily, the ranch was no longer just a place. It was home, a place of love, safety, and new beginnings. And with each step Lily took, Tom's heart grew lighter, knowing that she was ready to walk into a bright, hopeful future. The ranch was quiet in the early morning light. The sky was soft blue, and the birds sang a gentle song. Tom sat on the porch, holding Lily close. She had grown so much from the tiny baby he had brought home from the auction to a bright, curious little girl full of life. Tom smiled as Lily reached out to touch the leaves of a nearby plant. Her small fingers brushed gently, and her eyes sparkled with wonder. "You're growing up fast," Tom said softly. "Soon you'll be running all over this place." Lily giggled, her voice sweet like a song. She looked up at Tom and said, "Run." Tom laughed. "Yes, you will run, and you will learn many things. But always remember, this is your home. You are safe here." Life on the ranch was full of simple joys. The sun warmed the earth, the animals moved quietly in the fields, and the wind carried the smell of grass and flowers. Every day was a chance for new adventures. Tom and Lily spent their days exploring. They walked through the tall grass, watched the clouds, and counted the stars at night. Tom taught Lily about the animals, the horses, the cows, and even the little birds that made nests in the trees. One day, as they walked near the creek, Lily stopped and looked at the water sparkling in the sunlight. "Water," she said softly. Tom nodded. "Yes, Lily. Water is life. Just like you." Lily smiled and splashed her fingers in the cool water. Tom watched her, feeling his heart fill with love and hope. But Tom knew that the past could not be forgotten. He remembered the auction house, the day he found Lily alone and fragile. He remembered the fear and loneliness she must have felt. He made a promise to himself that day, a promise to protect her, to give her the family she deserved, and to never let her feel alone again. That promise became the heart of their life together. The neighbors often came to visit. They brought food, blankets, and sometimes just company. Slowly, the small town began to understand the power of kindness and love. One afternoon, Mary, the nurse, came by with a small book for Lily. "It's a book of stories," she said. "Stories to help you learn and dream." Lily took the book carefully and looked at Tom. "Read?" she asked. Tom smiled and opened the book. He read softly, his voice filling the room with warmth. Lily listened with wide eyes, dreaming of faraway places and happy endings. Tom knew that this was just the beginning of her journey. There would be many challenges, but there would also be joy, learning, and love. He looked at Lily and whispered, "You are stronger than you know, and you are never alone." Lily smiled and reached up to hug him. Tom hugged her back tightly, feeling a peace he had never known before. That night, as the stars shone brightly above, Tom and Lily sat by the fire. The world was quiet, but inside their hearts, there was a bright light, a light of hope, healing, and new beginnings. Together, they were no longer just a man and a child. They were family, bound by love stronger than any fear or sadness. And on the quiet ranch, beneath the endless sky, a new story was being written, one of courage, kindness, and the power of a heart willing to give. The future was bright, full of promise, and waiting for them to walk forward, hand in hand.